this third panel is really the heart of why we're here today, right? Really around like what the future of public safety looks like in the city of Newark. And we're really honored to have some of the leaders of this public safety ecosystem, right? The future, the real future of public safety here in the city of Newark. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to my co-facilitator of the Public Safety Roundtable, my brother Solomon Middleton Williams, to lead us in this final conversation today. All right.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Janicia. Thank you, Mona. I know you can't be the only one, you and Mona. But good afternoon, everyone. Bring your greetings from the South Ward, specifically the former neighborhood of Seth Boynton, which is no longer there, but that's my hood. And so I'm super excited about having this conversation today. Really quick before we begin, we're talking about the future of public safety here, and in the report, I just want to highlight a little piece of what I talked about missed opportunities in the report. When we talk about the future, we cannot talk about the future without looking back, and I want to repeat that again. Like, we can't talk about the future of public safety without looking back. And I like to draw your attention or your memory or your thoughts to a kid named Ibn Berger. He's from my neighborhood, and he lost his life at the hands of police. A year before then, his mother lost her life to an overdose. And when he had an interaction with law enforcement, he had a weapon on him, he had a gun, and the whole time he was crying for his mother, and he cried and he cried and he cried for his mother to come back to him. And then he also cried to meet her. And I wonder what life would have been for Ibn if we would have had services that we have today back then, right? Like Ibn, yeah, you guys can clap for it. Like truly, Ibn could be alive today. He could be, living. He could be thriving. But we no longer have Ibn here because we didn't have the systems in place. We didn't have the institutions in place to kind of support that. So I wanted to say that first, and then second piece, as we talked earlier about, I really wish I was on that second panel around funding, because my colleague Jennifer Gannett here, she helps out with development at NCST. We've been rocking for the past 4 years, and development is really important. Not only fiscal development, but the investment in people. And I came back home to Newark 4 years ago. I had a pleasure of traveling the country. One, because I was homeless. I'm gonna put that out there. I was homeless, and so I had to leave Newark, and there wasn't any opportunities. But I came back home 4 years ago, and I landed at NCST. And when we talk about providing generational wealth, we can't start talking about generational wealth without we talking about generational opportunities. And so I just want to give a quick shout out to Akila Sherrills. I know he's in the back talking. Akila. Give me 1 second, Akila. 1 second, Keisha, really quick. When we talk about investment, we can't miss the opportunity that Akila has invested in my life, right? This guy has never asked me to compromise my beliefs because we battle against different things. He's never asked me to do things that I didn't feel comfortable doing. And so when we talk about investment in public safety, this is the type of investment that I'm talking about. A kid from Seth Boynton who didn't graduate college, who graduated high school with a 2.1 GPA, who did not fit the normal status. But this guy back here, man, when we talk about public safety, this is the investment we're talking about. And so Akila, again, sincerely, brother, appreciate you, my family appreciates you, and the city of Newark appreciates you. And so we'll get on with the panel. If I do my job right today, we're going to identify a couple of things. We're going to identify what is currently happening here in the city of Newark, the opportunities. And I apologize if you see me sweating. It's because one, my obesity, and then two, I have thyroid issues. It's not because I'm nervous, but I'm good. So we're going to do our job well. We're going to talk about what's currently happening here in the city of Newark around community-based public safety, and what are some of the challenges around community-based public safety, and lastly, how do we overcome challenges, right? How do we overcome challenges in this work? And so I am honored to be here today with my family, and I'll start off with Kylisha Wingfield Hill. She is the new ED of the shoot, I'm drawing a blank now. Brick, I'm about to say OVP. I'm sorry, Keisha. Brick City Peace Collective. So I want to give out shout out to Kalisha. Thank you, Kalisha, for being here. Next, we have Barry, who is the Assistant Director of the Office of Violence Prevention. And then lastly, not lastly, we have also Mark here with OYN, who is a Policy Director for the OYN. And then lastly, again, as we look to the future of the work, we do have a representation here from the future of public safety, Zakiah, here with us from OYN. So first question, I want to go to Mark, man. Mark, we've been rocking for the past 4 years together, Mark. In your work, like what's currently happening? Like, what are you currently doing here in the city of Newark, and how does it relate to what we're doing here today?
So first, I want to just thank EJUSA, everyone who put this together. Thank you, Will, for the opportunity to be here with this panel. I also have to take a second because I think it's important if we're talking about the future of public safety. I have to also recognize and acknowledge those who allowed us and gave us an opportunity to be here. And so much in the same way that, Solomon, you talked about the impact of a killer on this city and on you and your family, I have to take advantage of the fact that the CEO, of the Opportunity Youth Network, Robert Clark, is here. My Brother's Keeper, which I'm the executive director of, is an initiative of the Newark Opportunity Youth Network. And Robert Clark has been in this city for 20 plus years working with Opportunity Youth and gave me the opportunity years ago to come into this public safety work and climb this mountain from the side of education. My background is more of a traditional educator, teacher, principal, et cetera, before I came into this work. It's that experience that I brought in and the opportunity that he's provided me to be able to serve, our people in our city that excites me about what I'm seeing now and for the future of the work. What I'm most excited about is one of the things we're doing through My Brother's Keeper is a youth policy advisory board, where we are tapping into young people across the city who are thinking about this work from a policy standpoint. We've engaged about 20 young people from around the city who are thinking about everything from the CCRB to thinking about the Office of Dropout Prevention bill that's currently sitting, who are standing up as the leaders. I don't like to say that they're the future, I think they're the now. I think we don't necessarily tap them as much as we could or should. And even in this instance, when we were talking about this particular panel, there was a seat that was empty, and we were trying to figure out, so who do we put in that seat? And I had to say, we gotta put a young person. Like, we can't, no shade to none of us. I ain't gonna look at Kalisha because she's trying to act like she's still a young person too. But we need young people who are present, who are speaking, who are not just sitting listening. And so one of the things I'm most excited about is things like our Youth Policy Advisory Board, things like our lead charter school, where we are producing future leaders and current leaders in the city. I'm excited about what other organizations are doing. So when I see NSA and I see others who are doing the same thing, that really excites me.
And I appreciate it. Thanks, Mark, for that. Barry, I want to skip right over to you. Like, what's happening now at OVP that we should be excited about?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Barry Ford. I am the Assistant Director of the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery. Glad to be here today to speak to you all about the work that we're doing. In our office, we are really excited about just the opportunity for true collaboration with law enforcement and the fact that we have a true, viable relationship with the Newark Police Division that allows us to really work collaboratively and share information. At the current time as we speak, we have our social workers who are working at all 6 precincts in the city, and they're there to follow up on daily crime reports in the city to see if victims need support, to ensure that referrals that are received from police officers are followed up on so that the citizens of our city have the supports they need, and just for general walk-ins, because you never know specific times or places where things will happen. And the fact that the Newark Police Division welcomes us into those spaces to be able to do that work, and the way that we're received, it's a true partnership indeed. In addition to that, in the office, we are working on a number of things in collaboration with the Brick City Peace Collective, which Kalisha will talk about, and other entities. We're able to provide programming in the city and provide opportunities for young people, such as our Peace Academy, where we do life skills and educational training for folks a few days a week. And this summer, we'll have an 8-week program where they work full-time doing internship as well as life skills training. And then during the year, our Peace, that's our Safe Summer Academy, and also our Guaranteed Education Pilot, which I'll allow Kalisha to speak about, where we're sending a number of youth to college and for real viable educational opportunities. So in the office, lastly, we're really excited about the fact that we are able to now, through our RFPs and forthcoming funding, provide the partners in the city the resources and the funds to be able to do the work. We do understand at OVPTR that our community partners are the core of this work. They are the individuals who are on the ground. They are the individuals who know specifically what's happening. They know the pulse of the work, and we want to invest in that, and we want to support that from a standpoint. Mayor Baraka, Director Yuri, and everyone, is really adamant about partnership and how we create, just clear understandings of what we're doing and that we're able to row in the same direction. So we are excited about that work, and we know that as we move forward, it's going to be amazing work that we do collaboratively. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Barry. Thank you. And we'll go to Kalisha next. Again, like you come from the mayor's office. You're now leading a Brick City Peace Collective. What were you doing with the mayor, and what's happening with Brick City Peace Collective?
Well, thank you, Solomon, and also, again, Kalisha Wingfield Hill, Executive Director of the Brick City Peace Collective. I do want to say thank you to EJUSA, the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery, and Newark Community Street Team for providing this space for us to be here today. I also want to shout out my amazing, fearless, bold leader, the Honorable Mayor Raz J. Baraka, for allowing me to be in this position and to take up space unapologetically. So thank you. I know he's not here, but he was here earlier. Many leaders, they have the vision, but some folks don't always have the will. And he actually created an ordinance a year ago and set aside 5% from the public safety budget to begin to fund this work. So we do want to thank him for that. And I truly do appreciate him. I will say this, shout out to each and every community organization that is represented here today. As a young girl from the projects, a mother addicted to drugs her entire life, and a father that has been incarcerated all of my life, and a grandmother that decided that she would be responsible for me. I am only able to sit in this seat because of community organizations that wrapped their arms around me and allowed me and decided that they were going to be responsible for me. So every community organization that's here today, just give yourselves a pat on the back, because I'm truly thankful for you. I will say, before stepping into this role, I was the policy advisor to Mayor Baraka in trying to figure out what legislation was needed in order for us to move some of this work forward. So I was at the table with legislators day in and day out, trying to figure out what the barriers are and how exactly are we going to accomplish some of the things that we say that we are going to accomplish. Many of us in the room know that systematic oppression is real, and it is the reason we have not been able to move the needle forward as quickly as we would like to. So that was one of the challenges that we had here in the city of Newark, and one of the things that, me and his other policy advisor was committed to doing. The Brick City Peace Collective, we are partnering with 16 community organizations and trying to figure out who is responsible for what, who is going to do what, and who is going to be responsible for who, right? So trying to figure out these different buckets and how it is we can begin to tie community organizations to different populations of people so that we can begin to move our people forward. Recently, we just launched the Guaranteed Education Pilot Program, and what we're doing is we're sending 40 at-risk kids to college for free. We do believe that this is one of the ways that we can begin to close the wealth gap here in the city of Newark. The last census report reported out that less than 16% of Newarkers had a bachelor's degree. So how are we going to educate our children? And we also understand the data says that that most Black people finance their education through debt, right? So we're already sending our kids into a situation that once they graduate college, they just can't stand up the way that an average kid that comes from a two-family household with an income that is, more than $36,000 would be able to. So we are definitely making an investment in education right now. And we have some other things that we are working on, figuring out how we're going to expand this program, but then also figuring out how can we quickly move some of this funding into the hands of the community organizations. There's a bunch of data that supports if we want to reduce violence, we have to begin to fund community organizations. That is the quickest way that we're going to be able to see a reduction in violence. So we have an RFP that we are working on and that we're planning to release at the end of August. But I'm extremely excited about that because, again, like I said, I do know that when we begin to allow community organizations to wrap their arms around our young people, you have more young people sitting in seats like the one I'm in, so thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you. So speaking about young folk, right? Yeah, I know you heard a lot today. If you were here yesterday, you heard a lot yesterday. Introduce yourself. How did you get here? And what role do you play in the ecosystem?
I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. I never really talked on a microphone before. But my name is Zakaya Bronskill. I'm 18 years old. I'm here today because OYN, Opportunity Youth. I'm graduating from Lead Charter School with Mr. Mark. Thank you. How can I say it? I like doing panels and stuff most of the time because I like to try to be a voice for other young people who are shy and don't really know how to speak up about their communities and different stuff like that. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm here. I don't really know.
No, it's good.
Okay. How did I get here? So I got into Lead because I was coming from an alternative school called Hillcrest in Scotch Plains, and it wasn't really helping me. I didn't see it helping the community and different stuff like that. I heard about Lead and Opportunity Youth Newark through a friend, and I honestly thought it would help me better and help me learn about the community more and how I could be a leader. And within the 2 years I've been in Lead, I've been in a lot of opportunities, got to meet a lot of different people. I've been in a liaison group, and I've been to California with the Opportunity Youth network event. So I got to meet a lot of different people, a lot of young people that are starting organizations and different stuff like that. So it's very inspiring. And that's one of the reasons also why I'm here, because I was in a panel there too. So it kind of gave me courage to do more and just be able to talk to people and speak up for young people.
Yep. And I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we continue the conversation, I know we have a few funders in here today. So we talk about subject matter experts. She is the subject matter expert that we should be talking to on a daily basis about youth issues and youth concerns. And so again, thank you so much for being here today. So I want to go right back to you, Mark. And look, you've been working for a long time, education, back in the community, education. And what are some of the barriers that you see to really moving forward, the public safety ecosystem here in Newark?
Yeah, there's something our mayor said years ago. I've been wearing it out. If you've heard me speak for 2 minutes, you've heard me say it, which is that the city is resource rich, but it is coordination poor. Yes. And I say it all the time because I just think it's so true. The more I think about this idea of poor coordination, the more I think about some of the silos that exist in our city and in our communities, right? I was born and raised in this side of the city, right, North Newark. Most people know that we don't go past Park Avenue. And if you live in the East Wards, you don't come up over McCarter Highway, right? So there's those types of silos that happen. I think there's also organizational silos that happen. I was talking to somebody earlier about this, thinking about all the people who are in this room. It's always interesting to me, and I was talking to Will about this a little last night, and Barry. There's a saying in Spanish which translated means that they shine by their absence, right? Brillan por su ausencia. And there are certain organizations or places or people that shine by their absence. For example, in this conversation, there is a silo that is our traditional public school system. There should be just as many people from our biggest employer who serves our largest number of young people in this city present here today, right? So that we're not always just leaning on Dawn. I don't mean to call you out, sis, but Dawn is always the face for MBOE at all of these events. But there are thousands of employees. There are over 40,000 students. It can't just be Dawn. She don't have enough cell phones for all of that. And so those are some of the barriers, the silos that exist, I think, in organizations, the silos that exist just kind of in neighborhoods across the city. I think another potential barrier, and it's funny because we were talking about this again also last night. I was talking with Sister Jay. She talked about this idea of we are oftentimes raising money and it feels like we are competing against each other. Yes. So if we get funding to serve Zakiah, does that mean then that NSA doesn't get funding to serve another young person? Or that Leaders for Life doesn't get funding to serve another young person? Or the Hub doesn't get funding to serve another young person? I've raised that barrier because I think it's a barrier that we talk about, and I think we understand it at a superficial level, but when we dive in, I think we will learn that there really isn't any competition. Prior to the pandemic, conservative numbers were that there were 4,000 opportunity youth, school-age young people who were disconnected from school and or work in this city. If you add up all the students that we currently serve, it is a fraction of that 4,000. And oh, by the way, that 4,000 was before the pandemic. And so there isn't a competition. If we understood the tiered systems of supports that these young people also need, that they're not a monolith. The young person who would do very well at LEAD may be very different than the young person who does very well at NSA versus Leaders for Life versus La Casa de Don Pedro. And to the initial silos that I mentioned, the students who would go to La Casa de Don Pedro are not going past Park Avenue to go to NSA or Leaders for Life or sometimes even LEAD. And so understanding those barriers and being able to tease them apart, I think we will realize that there are really opportunities in those barriers. It's why it's called Opportunity Youth Network. It's why we refer to young people like Zakiah as Opportunity Youth. Is because we see them as the greatest untapped resource in our community. And rather than trying to figure out how we solve for them as if they're the problem, I think that they can be the assets in solving the actual problems. So
Appreciate it. Thank you. So Barry, I'll ask you the same question around barriers from a systems, aspect, right? And then if you wanted to speak about what are some barriers that community members are saying to you guys, to access, what we talk about safety.
Well, relative to barriers, I think one of the biggest barriers that we have to the work is just the actual way that we, quote unquote, professionalize the work. When you look at a traditional workplace, you think of the things that it takes to be in a workplace. People have a certain level of educational attainment as far as accreditation. They have a certain level of years of experience in the work and things that they have done. However, in the work of public safety, what's so unique is that we have essentially a group of individuals as credible messengers who may not have the traditional educational credentials. They may not have the higher level literacy skills, the writing abilities and things like that. But as myself, as a gentleman with a master's degrees and years of education, I can't walk over into Bradley Court and say certain things because I don't have that credibility to do that, but those individuals can. And we, in the work, a lot of times don't give as much credence to the experiential accreditations that people have that allows them to move in different spaces. So when you come into a workspace such as ours, when you have individuals who are academically, professionally trained, and then those who are, for lack of a better term, hood smart, trained and understand, and you get into the work when it comes about how we're keeping records, how we're collecting data, things like that. How do we work together with both population to create systems that work for both sets of people and that they also feel comfortable working with each other? And then in that professionalism, we have social workers and individuals who have, credentials, but we need them in the street. We need them outside. We need them not afraid to go out into the community and know what's going on. Those folks that are out there that can do that, we also need them to think more structurally in terms of, we always say all the time, if something is not written down, it did not happen. Mm-hmm. So you may be able to go out there. We've had amazing stories that we can tell, just from a standpoint of, nuance and how a story is done and we saw it and it's great. But if it's not written down, if it's not recorded somewhere, how do we do that? And then how do we ultimately create those systems to professionalize this work? As our staff goes, we had this conversation yesterday, Mark and Will and I, about, let's say, for example, my outreach workers are going into the field. They come across individuals having an altercation. What if for some reason they get caught up in that altercation? They're not law enforcement professionals. They don't have a badge to pull out or something. Are they also arrested in that moment because they were involved in this sort of thing? How do we professionalize this work in a way that it is as substantial and critical and noteworthy as law enforcement does? And how do we give the credence to that? What sort of things and systems do we need to set up to be able to do that? Relative to the barriers that we hear in the communities, oftentimes it's about just knowledge of what's going out there. As Mark was saying earlier about just how we actually come together and coordinate, there are tons of resources out there. But those resources also change very quickly. And the things that I may tell someone 6 months ago may be completely different 6 months later. So how are we working together to be able to make sure everybody's in the know about the latest happenings, what's occurring, where are we keeping that information? How do we all have universal access to that so that when we're meeting with the clientele and the individuals from the community, we're able to point them in the right direction and a consistent direction based upon what they actually need. So those are the sort of things that we're going through every day, and those are the things that we really work hard continuously to work with partners such as yourselves and others to be able to bridge that gap and make sure that we're as effective and efficient as we can be.
And then Kylisha, thank you, Barry. I know, from your aspect, you worked with the mayor and you worked with the team to move the 5%, right, to get the investment into the hands of community members. But what are some of the barriers that you've seen throughout that process, to educate the community? What were some of the barriers throughout that process, and what are some of the barriers that you're seeing right now in your new role?
So one of the main barriers, I spoke briefly about it earlier, but systems that prevent our folks from having access to things that other organizations or, other groups have had access to for years. And a lot of our folks here in our community, they've been on the ground, some of these grassroots organizations, they've been doing this work and they've been doing it out of love, right? And trying to save children, and they wasn't asking for dollars. They wasn't asking to be paid. They just knew that it was children out there that needed them, that needed their support. And now we say, look, we're going to fund organizations, but then we realize that, look, we have to also invest in these organizations and help them build capacity, help them get some of these foundational documents that you guys are asking for funders, whether it's, even, government. We're asking, our organizations, we know they can do the work, but now we're asking for them to have documents to show that they're qualified to do the work that they've been doing 20 years when there was no dollar attached to the work. So that is one of the challenges, because you say you want to get $12 million into the hands of community organizations, but if the community organizations don't have the necessary paperwork, if they don't have the necessary documents, if they don't have the administrative, component to their organization, we have to first, help some of these community organizations build capacity so that they can get some of the funding that we are getting ready to hand out. Another one of the barriers is just having, legislation that supports the work that we're doing. Solomon, you and I spoke about it briefly. Even when we're talking about something, as big as, I don't want to say as small as big as affordable housing, Do we have affordable housing for the population of people that we're servicing, right? One of the bills that, Senator Booker is pushing right now is, trying to figure out why this blacklisting thing exists. If you got, evicted when you was 21 and now you're 34, you can't get an apartment because you got on a blacklist, and now, when it's time for you to apply for an apartment, you can't get one. And it's just like there are these different things that are existing at every level, whether it's locally, whether it's at the state or federally, that we have to begin to move out the way for the population of people that we're servicing to really begin to move the needle forward. So really trying to break down systems. I'm saying one ordinance at the time. I believe all politics are local. So we are trying to figure out everything that we can do locally to move this work forward, but also challenging our leaders at the state and down in DC, because we need them on board for the work that we are trying to do here in the city of Newark.
Appreciate you, thank you. And I think we can have an entire conversation around like housing and violence. Like I will just take over the whole conversation, but Will like kick me off this piece. So appreciate you, Kalisha. And so I know you heard the three, professionals, as we will call them, talk about, some of the challenges that they see within their work. Can you just tell us like some of the challenges that you see within the community, right, to accessing like safety? Yeah, you can speak truthfully here.
Okay, so I just want to bring up something that I was thinking about earlier, like with the other panels. I was hearing, even now I'm hearing a lot of stuff about like funding organizations and stuff like that. And it's kind of all new to me, like hearing like all the stuff that's going on. But it's just like as a young person, from my perspective and others, like we don't really see it. Like we don't really see like organizations and where the funding is going. We hear about it, but we don't see the changes. We don't see where the money is going and stuff like that. So it's just like we don't really try to get involved into organizations, because it's just like we're looking at it like, okay, it's just another organization, but what exactly is it doing? Like we're not seeing it. Like it's so much going on, like she said, like people get evicted and different stuff like that. People are out of jobs, people are homeless. Like I've been homeless too, and it's just like all this funding is going into a city, but like who is it helping? What exactly is it doing? It's so many people out here that's been homeless for months, years, and stuff like that, and the state is getting so much money, and it's just like they're not seeing it. They're not, like, students are out of school because of being homeless or not having some like clothes on their back and stuff like that, or food to eat, and it's just like all this money, like it could be going to people getting into housing, getting food, clothes, stuff like that, like, but it's just like we're not seeing it at all.
And then Mark, like I appreciate you, sis, for like highlighting that, right? And Mark, like just like your experience day to day to dovetail what she was talking about, like some serious barriers that our future, the youth, are having, like just in school, right, to access and safety. Can you just like expound upon like what she was talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we were having this conversation during lunch, Zakaya and I. This is the third time in 2 days that a young person has said to me, "What's OVP? What's BCPC? What's NSA? What's EJUSA? What, like, take all the alphabet soup and just literally have a young person, born and raised in this city, who's involved, who's doing work, who's wondering, what is all of this? And so it begs the question, we're talking about an ecosystem that is in service of, and I think it's evidence of the fact that we are doing for and not with young people. If they don't know what it is, then what are we doing other than just employing and taking care of a lot of adults, right? And we feel good about the work, and we should continue to do that work. But if we are not doing that work if we continue to try to figure out how we're going to do that work for, then there will not be a future of public safety, right? Because that future will retire with all of us. It will move to wherever we're going to move to, and then they will have to start from scratch, which is why it's so important, Solomon, that you started with you're not here without Akila, right? It's important for Kalisha to talk about how we're not here without the mayor. I'm not here without Robert Clark. We have to acknowledge those people who opened doors and said, come with. And so I think one of the barriers is that we don't do the come with, we do the let me do for. Yeah. And that's a huge barrier. Now that's a mindset shift, and to the being here all day, we could be here all day talking about how we do a lot for our communities, but not necessarily with the community. And I think that mindset shift is important. We see it as people who have organizations that we're running, trying to get funded, and we're like, well, fund us, we know how to do it, we've done this work. I think we sometimes forget that, Zakiah said this in California. We were in California, it was Opportunity Youth Conference, there was people from all over the country, and I remember when she came running over to talk to us about a young man her age in Minnesota who started his own organization serving his own people. And this is my version of the story. Zakiah might have a different version. My version was, as happy as she was to hear it, I was disappointed in the fact that we had not let her know that was possible for her. She had to go to California to meet a dude from Minnesota to realize, oh, I can do that too. And it made me have to look in the mirror and go, why couldn't I do that in Newark, New Jersey with her for the last 2 years? That's a barrier, and we got to figure out why our schools don't do that, why our programs don't do that, why our organization, why don't we have our young people go, I can start an NSA, a LEAD, a Yendor, an NCST, again, all those acronyms. Why don't we have our young people or remove the barriers that allow our young people to go, I can do that at 18. I don't have to do a 10-year bid to come back to them, figure out how to do it.
Big facts.
Right?
Yeah,
I could go too long. So that's where my head is at.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So I have two last questions, and we'll wrap up so that we can get to our next activity. We talk about appropriate investments into community-based public safety, what that looks like into this ecosystem. Let's talk about the opportunities. So we talked about, what we're doing right now. We talked about our barriers, but let's talk about the opportunities that we see with a deeper investment, specifically in the work that you do. So, specifically, Mark, Barry, Kalisha, and to the sis, what is that investment? How can we use the investment? When do we need the investment? How can we use it? So I'll start with you, Barry.
So we're talking about opportunities for investment. There are two specific areas where I see the opportunities for investment. One is in the actual communal investment in evaluation of the work that we do. A lot of the work that we do is told anecdotally. It's told in stories. It's told in, amazing feats and things that we've seen. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about fiscal dollars and we're talking about funding, we have to be able to, empirically prove that what we are doing in some way has a measurable effect on bringing violence down. And in doing that, there's an investment to be able, an evaluation for individuals who come in and work with us collectively as partners to be able to look at our work. What are the key points that denote what we're doing? What are those key performance indicators that show that we are making progress in the work? That's one. The second area is relative to just technical assistance and support. Everybody that does this work has a great heart in the work, and everybody, for the most part, goes into the work wanting to do something. But there are actually scientific ways and evidence-based practices in terms of doing violence intervention and prevention that people need to know and be trained on and coached through so that we all understand how we should be, the best practices for tackling these sort of issues. So in doing that, making sure that all of our partners collectively have an understanding of, for example, when we get our rapid response calls or our shooting calls and we're responding to a scene, whether that be at the hospital or whether that be in the community, what are we doing before we engage the community at all? What key factors are we looking for before we speak to people? When we're at the hospital, when we have grieving families and individuals there, what things should we be saying and should not be saying? When we all go in, we're all very well-intentioned in terms of the work, but there is specific key training. NCST, PCITI, a variety of different organizations do that sort of work and investing in that to make sure that there's a real consistent way that we approach this work that is scientific, that is measurable, and really speaks to the impact and the care and the efforts of the folks that are in the room.
Appreciate that. So Barry lifted up like investing in evaluations and then investing in people, training. So I appreciate that, Barry. Thank you so much. Kylisha?
Barry said some of what I was going to say, but I will say that also, having a true investment in prevention. I think oftentimes we are waiting for our young people to make a mistake and intervene, and then there's a lot of dollars being spent on intervention versus prevention. And I think that there are some early indicators that we can begin to look at that can begin to inform some of the work that we are doing, whether that's absenteeism, whether that is how many children are growing up in a home with just one parent, how many children are growing up in a home with a parent that's incarcerated. This is some of the data that folks are using, whether that's at the state level or whether that's in DC. So we need to be using that data here as well. Our community organizations need to be using that as well. And we also need to be able to set aside funding for prevention because those children are at risk. And then oftentimes beginning to look at what are some of the age groups or some of the populations that we are not touching. Oftentimes is, we're touching 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 14-year-olds, but being able to go and grab our babies much younger, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and being able to make a true investment during the earlier ages because the data shows that they are at risk. And if we do not begin to touch them at that age, then some of the community organizations, those youth wind up in your hands at 16, at age 17, and now we're providing so many dollars around intervention. So I will say that there has to be this true intentional investment in prevention, looking at some of those earlier indicators that speak to where our young people are going to end up 10 years from now. If they're, if 7 years old, there's data that they're looking at telling us where our young people is going to end up 10 years from now. So we need to be looking at that same data and saying, no, our community organizations is going to go save that 7-year-old, and whatever data you are thinking about, it's not in fact going to be true because we're going to fund community organizations at the level that they should be funded to go and grab those young people at a much earlier age. So a true investment in prevention.
Yeah, support. Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Kylisha. That prevention piece is huge, and we don't talk about it enough because, it's we're stuck in, the work that I do is CVI work, right? Intervention, public safety professionalism work, and we don't do enough in the prevention space. So I appreciate you uplifting that. Mark, if you had the investment, what would we do with it?
Yeah, I definitely prevention. Kylisha was speaking my language, for sure. I think the other thing I would lift up, and it's something that, in full transparency, I haven't thought about as much until I got in this space really yesterday, talking about this and thinking about it last night and even today, is an investment on who is healing the healers, right? An ecosystem means that there are multiple stakeholders who have jobs and roles and responsibilities. And the question that I'm wondering as I sit here with people who are warriors, if I had to go to war with any day of the week, I know I would come to this room and be like, yo, we gotta go to war. And I know we're gonna be all right. My question is, do we know how to turn, when the war is over, or do we know when to take a pause to breathe during that war, right? Because it can't just be in perpetuity and we're always on go. And it makes me wonder who's caring for our carers, right? Who mentors our mentors, who heals our healers. And I think it's interesting to think about who's doing that. What's the acronym that does that work? And because I don't know it, right? But I think we need it. Otherwise, it's hard to sustain this work, right? And all of us know what it is to lose sleep and be tired, and right, I'm eating a chocolate chip cookie last night, and Solomon's like, I gotta go write some grants, and I'm like, damn, maybe I should be writing some grants too. And then, right, I can't even enjoy my cookie because Solomon's running to write grants, and it's right, Denisa yesterday is like, I'm here on vacation. This should not be Denise's vacation. right? As powerful as this is, as much as it's needed, like, but this should not be her vacation. And we all need, I'm a man of faith. Even God did something, stopped, and it says every day he looked at it and said, this is good. And he paused and appreciated it. And after 6 days of doing that, even God said, I'm going to take a day off, right? But we continue to push and grind and move and go, and we feel inadequate. We feel, guilty. But if we are not taking care of ourselves, I hear you, sister. If we are not taking care of ourselves, then, there's an investment needed in that area. Otherwise, again, I said this twice now, there will not be much of a future of this work.
Yeah, appreciate it. And I know, Mark, I don't want to call people out, but I know people in this space right now who are doing exactly what you're talking about, right? Like, how do we get dollars to those people, who are healing the healers, right? Because that's important. At NCST, we see the benefit because we do it every week. And so I'm going to shout out, I don't care, Aaliyah Berry. She does our healing work for our staff. So I just want to say thank you, Aaliyah, because you're there with our clinical team on a weekly basis doing it for pennies. I know, I'm so sorry, but you do it anyway, and it's really supporting our team, and it's having a great impact in the community, so thank you for that. Back to you. You ready? Let's give you an investment, right? What would you use those dollars for, as you talked about earlier? Like, there's dollars coming in the city, but where is it at? What would you use it for?
I would probably use it for helping young people who don't have places to stay. I know people who steal cars just to stay in a car at night, stuff like that. I would use the investment for things like that. People don't have nothing to eat. It's people that's going into garbages to eat. I know I have food on my table, so I would want everybody else to eat too. I would think of stuff like that. Like I said, the organizations are good and stuff like that, but it's just I feel like us young people don't really look at it like that because we don't see it. We still have friends that's not going to school because they trying to figure out how they going to get money at the end of the night to go back and take to their family and stuff like that. And I feel like us as young people, we shouldn't have to worry about that. I've been working since I was 13, not because I had to, just so I don't have to ask my parents for stuff, because I always felt like that's something I needed to do. But us as young people, we shouldn't have to be like that. We shouldn't have to worry about what's going to be our next job. How can we get some fast money so we could have nice shoes, nice clothes, food to eat, nice cars. We shouldn't have to worry about stuff like that. And I feel as though, in the environment, it's just so crazy. We have to think like that. How are we going to make it better for our kids and stuff like that? But it's we feel like nobody really making it better for us. So it's just we got to look at things like that. So I will put my investment more into people having homes, people having food, clothes, different stuff like that, and being able to see that money going to it, not just hearing about it and oh, okay, they got the money, but what about me and stuff like that.
I appreciate it. I just wanted to, again, uplift what she just said around, yeah, thank you, Michelle. We have, as she described, we have youth who are eating out of trash cans. Can we just take a moment for that here in the city of Newark? We got youth stealing cars for shelter. Can we take a pause on that? So appreciate you. Thank you so much for lifting that up. So as we close, there's been a lot of conversation about, again, the future of public safety. We outlined, again, what we're doing, some of our challenges, what are the opportunities? You guys laid out the opportunities in front of us. So the last question is, does this model work in other cities, right? And if there is one part of the model that you guys really like the most, what would you take to another city and start? For me, let me give you a cheat code. For me, I would start Safe Passage or the Public Safety Roundtable if I was in other cities, right? That's what I would do. So if there's a program or something out of the model that you would extract and put it somewhere else, what program or what model would that be? And I'll start with you, Kylie. You asked me not to start with you first, but
No, it's fine. I think that one of the things that I would certainly take to another city is the implementation of social workers being involved in the response to a scene at a home. I think that, every problem is not a police issue. And I certainly think that our community has suffered from so much trauma that it requires credible messengers like these community organizations, an outreach worker, a social worker, to be a part of that task force. So I think that was brilliant. Kudos to the mayor for, saying that for every 10 police officers that's hired here in the city of Newark, we're going to bring on a social worker, because when I think about some of the things that I experienced, I do not think that it warranted a police officer, but instead it warranted a social worker or someone from the community to respond. So I definitely think that's a model worth adopting and encouraging every city all across the nation to consider that model.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Kylie, you actually said what I was going to say, so I had to pull something else. I would take just, at least in the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery, like the three-pronged approach that we have to violence when we're looking at, one, preventative measures and what we do with that. Second, the intervention in the moment that it occurs. What are the immediate responses, because they're so critical in terms of what happens next. And then lastly, the long-term trauma recovery, so that we're looking at what we can do to prevent things from happening again in the future. We already had this hardship, and then what we do again to prevent it. I think in doing that, as a city, a lot of times we're going to be in those three different areas. As we talked about the youth, earlier, I had the opportunity to mentor some young men at Lincoln Elementary last week, and they asked me what my biggest fear was, and I told them my biggest fear would be to talk to you right now and then see you tonight at University Hospital. Yeah. And when I said that to them, they were all, they're young kids, they're all over the place, but that really caught them. And I just think that, we're always in those points, so the earlier, as it was said earlier, the earlier we can catch, younger people and intervene now. We may not reap it in the moment, but 5-10 years from now, we can see that, an intervention. Those moments are so critical when we do our, particularly like our responses to shootings and things like that. Those key moments, if you can talk somebody off the ledge of an immediate retaliation and things along those lines, that's so pivotal to stopping additional violence or additional crimes from happening. That's what we're doing. And that last piece, the trauma recovery, just because as a community, particularly of color, we often think, we all right, we're going to be good. I'm born and raised in the Bronx. I know the things I've been through, but I'm going to be good. I'm going to keep pushing. But sometimes we need to process things, and we need to get them out and say them so that we process them and that they don't repeat patterns in our lives. So just that three-pronged approach, I think, is really what I would take to any city.
Appreciate you. Thank you, Barry.
I want to add on to what both of they said, especially what Kalisha said, about having social workers. We definitely need more social workers to work with police officers, because I feel as though it's to the point we don't even want to call police officers, because it's just it makes the matter worse at this point. That's how we kind of look at it, especially as young people and stuff like that. So it's just they don't have social worker skills. They don't know how to some police officers don't know how to, talk to people to de-escalate the situation. So I feel as though social workers are trained for that, police aren't. They just go there to, arrest somebody at this point. So I feel as though, if they work with social workers, they would know what to do, when they come to a situation, if someone's fighting and something like that, to de-escalate it, instead of everybody thinking they're getting arrested or something may happen because the police is coming. We shouldn't be scared of the police. We should be able to, talk to them, make sure, we should be able to think everything's going to be okay, not when they come, okay, everybody run. No, it shouldn't be like that. So I feel as though with social workers working with them, we could be able to talk to them so they're understanding us from our standpoint in a situation, and stuff like that. So
Thank you so much. And Mark, send us home.
Yeah, no pressure. So I'll say two things. I say one is this idea of a network of organizations and programs working together collaboratively is necessary for the model to work. It can work anywhere, but I think if there isn't that collaborative spirit, I think then it can't work. That's true here or anywhere. The second thing I'll say is you kind of stole the one that I was going to take. There is, if you ever want to see community at its best, just on a Tuesday morning, join the public safety roundtable conversation. It is just, I mean, every time I'm sitting in that public safety round, first of all, I promote it everywhere I go. It don't matter who I talk to. Have you been to a public safety roundtable conversation? You need to show up. It's every other Tuesday. I'm gonna add you to the invite. Because, and then I sit there and I just see us just in our best form, and I picture in my head what that public safety roundtable conversation will look like when it gets started, because it needs to get started in the North Ward, and it's in Spanglish, and we got our own abuela there, right? And we got our own abuelos there, and we got our own people from the North Ward who are having the same conversation. And then I think about what it would look like in the East Ward when they're talking about in Portuguese, and what it looks like in other wards when it's in Haitian, and when and our Nigerian brothers and sisters are also having their stakeholders and their community present in that conversation. And then what it would look like if you spread it across the country, and now you have your Mexicans and your Filipinos and your like it is beautiful to watch, and I look forward to it every other Tuesday, to just be on that call, seeing it happen, and thinking about how do we duplicate this, replicate it, not across the city, but even across the state and across the country. Because to me, it is in some ways what glues all the work together. Because at the end of the day, when I leave that public safety roundtable conversation on Tuesday, I know that I'm gonna have to be accountable to all those 100 faces again in 2 weeks. And I can't show up there not having done what I was supposed to do for the last 2 weeks. Because somebody, right? Somebody, probably Miss Sharon, is gonna call you out and say, you didn't do what you were supposed to do these last 2 weeks, right? And in that public safety roundtable conversation, the other thing that happens organically is that you have, Miss Sharon is a gem in our community, right? Baba Zaid is a gem. Nah, you shine bright. It don't matter if they don't see the shine, you shine, right? But what I don't know if you probably do realize it, and Baba Zaid, I know you realize it. There are young people on that call who are also going, oh, that's what it's supposed to look like, right? Oh, that's how I'm supposed to say it. And there's an education that happens in those public safety roundtable conversations that is necessary, and it sustains the future of the work. And that's why, to me, if you haven't been, let me know. I'll send you the calendar invite. Every other Tuesday, next week Tuesday is the next, you need to be a part of those conversations. They are community at its best, and every single neighborhood, ward, city needs to be involved at that level. So you stole it, but I had to jump on it because you can't emphasize it enough.
Yeah, appreciate that, Mark. Thank you so much. And so I'm going to give you an assignment for the public safety roundtable.
Nah, I saw you look at Will. Y'all about to set me up.
Yeah, no. So I heard you earlier, Mark, about the role that education plays in reducing violence in this ecosystem. And I wonder what a public safety roundtable, or they call it civics, but what we're doing is not really, it's civics, but it's something else, right? What would it look like if we had a public safety roundtable in each school to address
Yeah. So when I was a principal of a re-engagement center, which we need, and I know we're tight on time, so I'll be quick. I'm sorry, Will. I've lived that. and it works, right? And it worked with the hardest to serve students, where they were responsible for what happened in that community. And if it went left, I said to them, here's a problem we have. Tell me how we are going to fix it. I rarely, if ever, had conversations about how to fix young people's problems. It was, how do the young people help us fix the problems that we collectively have? And just quick sidebar, there's a way to actually, within the NJDOE's standards and curriculum, to actually accredit that type of work so that young people can earn actually high school credits for being involved in public safety work in their own community. And I would love to have the conversation about how to do exactly that, because the school's gonna say that's a waste of time, that's supplemental, let them do that after school. All of those things are not true, but oh, by the way, they can also earn credits for doing so, and so we should have that conversation.
Will do. Thank you so much. So give it up for our panel today. Thank you so much.